These are the highest stakes, and the Trump administration has badly bungled this. The greatest deterrent to a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, which would send, seismic ripples through the world economy, through the international political system, the greatest deterrent was not any weapon we had.
China is watching, and they're not hiding it anymore. In fact, they just made it clear to the world that they're ready for a showdown. And Donald Trump's reckless trade war is playing right into their hands. Reports are now emerging that Chinese state media, known for its strict censorship, is letting footage of military drills and Taiwan invasion prep air uncensored. Think about that for a second. This isn't a slip-up. This is a calculated, deliberate signal. A flex to the world that they're no longer afraid of economic consequences. And why should they be? Trump has already done the hardliners' work for them. By launching his chaotic tariff war, he's pushed Beijing closer to full economic decoupling from the U.S., something China's leadership has been quietly preparing for years. The message from Beijing is loud and clear. If you want to cut us off, go ahead. We're ready. This is exactly what the hardliners in the Chinese Communist Party have been waiting for. An excuse to hit the gas on their long-term plan to break free from American economic influence. They're rolling out the propaganda, reviving speeches from Mao Zedong about never yielding to foreign pressure, and testing how far they can push without consequence. This isn't just saber rattling, it's a dangerous new phase in U.S. China relations, and Trump is too busy chasing headlines and Twitter likes to see the bigger picture. Alright, let's break it down. But before we do, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and stick around for the truth they don't want you to hear.
All right, Fareed Zakaria is out front now, the host of Fareed Zakaria GPS. So, Fareed, while Will was reporting, and Will and I on this show together so many times, and most of his reports go to bars and tone in China. Most of the time they censor them. They did not censor this. A report about a potential invasion of Taiwan, beginning with a U.S. general saying that they are not practicing, that they are literally rehearsing, that these aren't drills. And they don't censor it. What is really at stake here tonight?
These are the highest stakes, and the Trump administration has badly bungled this. The greatest deterrent to a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, which would send, seismic ripples through the world economy, through the international political system, the greatest deterrent was not any weapon we had. It was the fear that China had that they would be decoupled from the American economy, the economy with which they had, for the last 40 years, built a deep interdependent relationship. Trump has fired that gun pointlessly, without a plan, without a strategy. As far as I can tell, the tariffs on China were raised to 145% simply because he wanted to save face. He was backtracking and flip-flopping on all the other tariffs, so he needed to turn China into his punching bag. But because of that, what he has done is play into China's hardliners' hands. They have been waiting for this decoupling. They practiced it during COVID. They practiced it during the Shanghai lockdown. And now what they're going to say is, look, if we go into Taiwan, what do we have to lose? We've already been cut off from the American market.
I mean, it is stunning to consider that this may be where this goes. You talk about the path from tariffs to war, a precipitous one. In China, I want to just show this. Will Ripley, showed that post that the foreign ministry recently posted on X. So this post, Fareed, has now 13 million views. So what it's of is the former leader Mao Zedong speaking during the Korean War era. Now, that is the last time, the Korean War, when China and America were actually at physical war, clashing on a battlefield, right? That's being posted now. And he says, in part, Mao, no matter how long this war lasts, we will never yield. And that is trending now in China. I know this feeds into what you're talking about, but the symbolism here is so culturally significant.
The beginning of China's modern history that every school child is taught in history books is that China was forced and humiliated by Western powers, including the United States, in the 19th century, and had to back down and had to accept humiliation and a kind of neo-colonial arrangement with the foreign powers. And the message of Chinese history is never yield like that again. We will never allow ourselves to be put in a position like that. Look, and the Chinese have a fairly strong hand. A lot of the things the United States imports from China, precursors to chemical, pharmacy, drugs, chemicals, minerals. These are all core things, computer chips. I think I saw one number that said 60% of the chips we import are Chinese chips. We need that stuff. It's not going to be easy to find it somewhere else. You can't find rare earth all over the world. The Chinese, on the other hand, a lot of what they get from us, agriculture, soybeans, things like that, they can get from elsewhere. And most importantly, don't forget, China is a dictatorship. Xi Jinping doesn't have to worry about public opinion in quite the same way that Donald Trump has to worry about it.
No, you also just came out with an op-ed, Fareed, and you talk about the tariffs. And in this, you write about your own context on it, growing up in India, a country obviously riddled with tariffs and where, I mean, no business could survive of any size. It was all about what kind of government handout you were getting or who, you were. It was corruption. You go on to say, when I got to America, I was thrilled to see that most businesses went about their work with little care as to who was in the White House. But now I watch tech pioneers give interviews slavishly extolling Trump's genius, and Wall Street titans race to post North Korea-style congratulations to the president for his brilliance in rescuing the economy from his own actions. And I wonder, what country am I living in? How significant is this moment for you, Fareed, as you see this?
It's a very sad moment, honestly, because to me, as a kid coming to America, America was the city on the hill, the shining example of how a modern economy should work. You have a market, you have rules, you have laws, everybody plays by them. It doesn't matter whether you know the prime minister, the president, a senator. That wasn't important. What was important was the merit. Did you have a good product? Could you sell it to people? And now when you look at the orgy of corruption that is going to be unleashed, we have studies already from the first Trump term. Firms that gave money to Republicans got more exemptions than firms that gave money to Democrats. Already you have Vietnam saying we're gonna expedite the Trump organization's project. Real estate projects are being signed in 19 countries with the Trump organization right now. Yep. All of it says to you that this is an economy where political favor, knowing people, all that has become the key, not the market. Which was the glory of the American economy.
All right, Fareed, thank you very much. And I just want to show everyone what is on screen right now in China as this report aired. As I said, this is just when Fareed was talking about Mao Zedong. When we had that particular part of the conversation, it went to bars, Fareed. The rest of the conversation, Will Ripley's report, all of that they did not censor. I say that just to emphasize the closeness with which they are watching this and making these decisions. So the part about invading Taiwan, they obviously wanted that to go out there now. It was censored, obviously, during the Mao Zedong comments.
All right, let's cut through the noise. What we're seeing right now is nothing short of a geopolitical disaster in the making, and Trump's reckless trade war is throwing fuel on the fire. Here's what's really happening. First off, the fact that Chinese state media isn't censoring footage of military drills simulating an invasion of Taiwan should have every alarm bell ringing. This isn't a subtle move. This is China practically announcing, we're ready. It's a message to the world, and specifically to the United States, that they are prepared to go all in, and that the economic consequences they once feared are no longer a deterrent. And why should they be afraid? Trump has already done Beijing's hardliners a massive favor. By launching his chaotic tariff war, Trump essentially greenlit China's long-term plan to decouple from the U.S. economy, a strategy they've been quietly rehearsing for years. They practiced it during COVID lockdowns. They tested it during the Shanghai crisis. And now they're rolling it out for real, and they're doing it with a level of confidence that should terrify American policymakers. Let's be clear. The greatest deterrent to a Chinese invasion of Taiwan was never just military might. It was the deep, interdependent economic ties that both countries have spent decades building. It was the fear that cutting those ties would be too costly. But Trump blew that deterrent to pieces with his reckless 145% tariffs on Chinese goods. He turned China into a political punching bag, not for strategic reasons, but to save face at home. It's the kind of short-sighted, ego-driven move that has massive, long-term consequences. Now, China's hardliners are saying, what do we have to lose? If their economy is already being strangled by US tariffs, why not push further? Why not test the limits? The recent surge in Chinese nationalist propaganda, including replays of Mao Zedong speeches vowing to never yield, is a clear sign that Beijing is ready to escalate, and Trump's trade policies have only made it easier for them. And here's the part that should really keep American policymakers up at night. China holds the economic high ground in this conflict. The US is deeply dependent on Chinese imports, including critical materials like rare earth elements, pharmaceuticals, and semiconductors. 60% of US semiconductor imports come from China. Good luck building an iPhone or a missile guidance system without those. Meanwhile, China can source a lot of its agricultural imports, like soybeans, from other countries. And unlike a US president, Xi Jinping doesn't have to worry about public opinion or re-election. He can play the long game without the political baggage that drags Trump down. And let's not ignore the broader economic damage Trump is doing. We're already seeing a return to crony capitalism, where political loyalty is rewarded and economic merit is an afterthought. Fareed Zakaria's point is spot on. America is slipping from a meritocracy to a political fiefdom, where those who donate to the right people get the contracts and the exemptions. Trump's first term was a preview of this. Firms that gave to Republicans got more favorable treatment than those that didn't. And the Trump organization is cutting real estate deals in 19 countries as we speak, using political connections to cash in. The bottom line is this. Trump's reckless trade war and chaotic foreign policy have set the stage for a potentially catastrophic conflict. He's weakened America's leverage, emboldened China's hardliners, and made it easier for Beijing to justify an invasion of Taiwan. This is what happens when you have a president who treats international relations like a reality show and doesn't understand the long-term consequences of his actions. Alright, let's break this down further. But before we do, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and stick around for the truth they don't want you to hear.